Hi, and welcome to Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger. And joining me on this show is Steve Kearney, who is the District 5 Supervisor for Calaveras County. Steve, it's nice to have you on the show this evening.
Thank you, Joel. Nice to be here.
So you've been in your position as Supervisor for in the neighborhood of 3 months, is that correct?
Yes.
So it's still just getting your feet on the ground, I imagine, with all kinds of information coming your way. And I know that during the campaign, you attended many meetings and studied up, but there's nothing quite like actually being in the seat. Is that right?
Well, you've touched on something. Yes, you have to be in the seat to experience the full mantra of what you're going to be doing.
So let's go back over the campaign just for a minute, since it's still fairly recent history. I know that we spoke kind of during the campaign. What was it like to run for public office in Calaveras County, and did you take away anything from that experience?
Well, it's busy. Our county, compared to say metropolitan areas, they do not have the huge financial cost of running a campaign, I don't believe, but I also manage my own campaign, so if there was a mistake to be made, I made it, or if there was a victory, then it was my victory. And when I look back, it was quite an experience. It's a constant self-examination, but just as importantly, the people that you're talking to and often debating against were teachers every day too. I didn't walk away from those experiences not paying attention to them. They often had things to say that I thought were very valuable, and going forward I've kept a hold of them from all of those candidates.
Did you find yourself going throughout most of the county, or did you mainly focus on the area where your constituents would be voting? How did that work for you? Mainly
focused on the area where my constituents would be voting. I can tell you I did venture out of the area a little bit, but the most exchange that I had that I thought would be valuable to the campaign was in District 5 and in the general vicinity, and I stayed there for the most part.
So when it came down to election night, what was your frame of mind? Like, were you feeling confident? Were you really not sure which way it was going to go? How did you feel that night?
Well, you always say you're confident, but if I told you that my stomach wasn't doing topsy-turvies, I would be telling a big fib. So yes, I was anxious on election night. Had a wonderful team of support people there that were just good friends and family members. Phone calls from family members, and yes, it was a exciting night. It was a night of some anxiety, so I don't want to come off across somebody who thought they were walking into a smooth victory, but thank goodness that ended up the way it did.
And I don't remember what the breakdown was, but what was the percentages, a ballpark figure? Honestly,
I don't remember either, Joel. I guess okay. I try not to focus on that.
Okay.
To me, even the candidate I ran against had a lot to offer, and I paid attention to him, so I don't, I guess to me it's not important to know how much I beat somebody, it's how much I got from them.
Oh, okay, okay. So you've taken your seat on the board, and you've been in there for about 3 months. Is there anything that you found, even in this short time, that was just completely unexpected or different than what you assumed it might be?
It really is what I expected, but even though you expect it, the reality does set in, and having worked in the business community for so many years, especially in a corporate environment where you're told to get results and get them yesterday, but when you come into this environment, if you want to accomplish something, or you've got a goal or a vision of something on the horizon, you have to have a tremendous amount of patience, because nothing happens that quickly. So the things that I've been working on, they're a work in progress, and sometimes I'm surprised that I've gotten as far as I've gotten with a couple of them, but that is, even though it is what I expected, the reality of it does hit you at home.
When you were on the campaign trail, and now that you've been supervisor, I know that you continue hearing from constituents. What were three of the main things that really rose to the top as priorities for the folks that you represent?
Well, some of it depended on the time. I mean, today at a special meeting, we addressed AB 142, which is in connection with the Wild and Scenic Act. For a while, that was a hot topic. It did die down during the campaign trail after it came and went on the board, but the general plan, of course, was a subject that just continued to go on, and our budgetary issues that we're dealing with, that was a subject that was constant. And what can you do to get us going a little bit economically was something also that came up continuously.
And I want to delve into those issues in a little bit more detail, but before we do, you know, I forget that most people probably don't know where the heck District 5 even is unless they pay attention to the campaign. So can you give our viewers kind of a geographic explanation of your area?
Well, a lot of people are somewhat confused because it used to be large geographically, and now it's one of the smaller districts, if not the smallest. Generally, it's Jenny Lynn, out towards the Milton area, Rancho Calaveras, and there's also a good bit that kind of takes going over towards Burson and all the way to the county line near San Joaquin County.
Okay, and I guess these districts are based on population, and that happens to be one of the, especially Rancho, one of the most densely populated areas. So is that why the district is smaller?
Well, I think before it was connected with Copperopolis when, prior to the election in 2010. And during reapportionment, they made it smaller because the population center is pretty intense in Rancho Calaveras. Mm-hmm. And if you take the entire county and you try to divide it up in fifths, it just made logical sense to keep that together.
Okay. So you had mentioned AB 142, and that's very timely since we just both were actually at a meeting this morning when the Board of Supervisors was discussing whether or not to support AB 142. And if you could just give viewers just a brief overview of what that bill would do in relation to the McCollum River and the wild and scenic discussion, and then maybe let them know what the board decided to do today.
Well, the bill is a bill that was sponsored by Assemblymember Bigelow, Frank Bigelow, and it will, should it be signed into law by the governor, it would require a significant study be done on the McCollum and its tributaries should the wild and scenic designation be requested again. And the board brought it out for discussion with the community in a special meeting, which was called this morning. And we did have a significant amount of people in the room. It was fairly much standing room only. In fact, I wrote down we had 38 people give testimony in general, which is very unusual. It's very good, actually, and it was a very, very respectful, no matter whether you agreed with what a person was saying or not, for the most part, discussion, which was also good. There were 12 people that gave testimony that were against sending a resolution to 142 and against 142, and the balance was in favor of it that gave comment. The board voted 3-2 to send a resolution to the State Assembly that Calaveras County Board of Supervisors supports AB 142.
And so to give people a little history, you had mentioned that SB 1199, which would have designated a 37-mile stretch of the McCollum as wild and scenic, that was initially supported by the Board of Supervisors twice last year. And you weren't a part of that, though. You had not been elected at that time. If something of that nature came back to the board, if another bill was brought forth to make a similar stretch, wild and scenic, Where do you personally come down on a wild and scenic McCollum?
Where do I stand?
Where do you stand on it?
Well, last year I read into the record when I was a candidate a very well thought out position that I was against SB 1199, and it was after I read SB 1199. There could be significant amendments to SB 1199 that might work and protect the water rights of the county. If it were to come out exactly as it stood last year, I would not be in favor of it. What are the amendments going to be? I'm going to have to look to what they might be before I could say yes or no. But as it stood last year, I wasn't in favor of it then, and I haven't changed my attitude now.
There was a few people today who actually encouraged the board to go back and rescind the support of a wild and scenic status for the McCollum, and the board didn't end up discussing that because it was focused on AB 142. But if that did come back and the board discussed possibly rescinding that past action, where would you stand on that?
Well, I think I would be hypocritical if I didn't stick with what I read last year, because I wasn't in favor of it last year, and I don't believe I'd be in favor of it now. So if it was brought to me, I would probably vote to rescind it.
To rescind.
It wasn't on the agenda proper today, so discussing that was a difficult, even though a lot of the testimony was continuously about that, discussing it wasn't as easy as it might seem from the board's standpoint. I wish I could tell you I was a perfect expert in the Brown Act, but we do have to follow those rules and make sure that we don't stumble on them.
Right. So kind of in relation to the topic of water, there is a serious drought going on, and we're entering what looks to be the 4th year of drought in the county. And there's a situation in the Lake Tulloch area where there have been talk of that water source possibly being drawn down. And I know that the Board of Supervisors, at one point was considering possibly even taking an emergency action, or at least, weighing in, which you did. Could you go over your thoughts on the water situation and how that might affect Calaveras and Tulloch specifically?
Well, in the time we have, boy, I don't know. If I get going on that, it'll be hard for me to stop. But our water affects us in so many ways, not just the water that comes out of our faucet, but our county is dependent on the activity that goes on around these lakes. And I'm not as familiar with Lake Tulloch, obviously, as I am with Hogan Party and Comanche, but I can tell you for a fact that a lot of, when I did business in Valley Springs, my business went down dramatically if Hogan wasn't in good shape. Whereas if Hogan was in good shape until the end of August, my business might have improved by about 20 to 30%. So I'm going to make the assumption that someplace like Tulloch, businesses around Maloney's, businesses around White Pines, or those that benefit on the way up to Lake Alpine, all of them are dependent on the shape of the water. And with the drought that we're in, we can't afford to do anything that isn't well thought out. Draining Lake Tulloch down at the cost to people that live here, the water, the possible economic devastation that could happen because of it. No, I'm not in favor of doing that. So I do support activities that say stop.
And what did the board do about that particular situation?
Well, we sent in our words too that said, please don't do this. To be succinct about it.
Okay.
I don't have the resolution in front of me, and I'm not even going to try to remember every word. But basically, we're saying that this is not the right activity. Please remember that there are people that live around the lake, and we as a government don't support you doing that.
So you mentioned just how much economic, kind of good lakes can bring, and then bad, if they're down, and that's true. And it seems like whatever businesses we do have, it'd be nice to kind of hang on to those. But at the same time, there's been an ongoing call from most people that I've talked to for more jobs and more economic activity in this county. And even with reservoirs full, that's not going to change that situation. We still have a problem. And I know you probably heard that on the campaign trail, and you mentioned that was one of your top 3 issues. So what do you think the Board of Supervisors' role is in the economy in Calaveras County, and what would you personally strive to do in conjunction with your fellow board members?
Well, I think it's important that we get the general plan passed and we get it enacted. We really have to tell, it's not that business can't come here right now, but if we're not putting out the message that, yeah, we've got our books in order, so come on and join us, it's really difficult to go out there and sell that to businesses that might be looking in here. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I've been saying that all along. Sometimes you've got to call out to them. I find myself traveling on the outskirts of the county and pointing out open buildings that we have and telling businesses, hey, come on here. And maybe a supervisor shouldn't do that in a normal situation, but right now I really don't have a problem doing that. I think the role of the board in general has got to be to get the general plan passed, and we have to figure out how to do that and respect the property rights of the citizens as we do it, but also let the business community know that this is a place to come. Opportunity is incredible. Our citizens are going elsewhere to spend their money, and we need to put a stop to that.
So you mentioned the general plan, and I know that you are probably still just getting into that. You've been in the chair for about 3 months, so I don't want anything in too great of detail, but is there any kind of a rough timeline on if everything, just the stars aligned, when we might see a general plan passed?
If I could answer that, Joel, they probably want to put statues up in my honor, but and I don't want that for sure, but I don't know. There are a lot of things to work out. A lot of issues that, one of my campaign promises was not to forget the Rancho Special Plan. It's important to the people that live there, and I know there are things that are important in other areas of the county that people have worked on. And I've kept my promise. I've got the special plan delivered to the county, and in actuality it was a supervisor before me that did it, but I worked with them on it. We got that groomed and made our suggestions for bringing it up to snuff with current code, and I don't want to see the work of the people neglected in the general plan, but we have to find a way to expedite it as much as we can also.
I hear various interim and permanent planning directors say, if we want to get this thing passed, in a timely manner, we may need to not include the community plans and get something through, and then we could incorporate more things in at a later date. However, we'd have that plan passed, and we could finally get it done. Are you in favor of the expedited version, or would you rather see the community plans incorporated prior to the new plan passing?
I have to really... I'm in favor of getting the general plan passed. How exactly that's going to happen, I'm not sure. I'm not in favor of throwing all the community work out the window. If we can update it 4 times a year, I said in the campaign trail I would agree to that, and I would do that now. I don't believe nothing's going to be forgotten. Nothing will be forgotten. If we were to pass these, the general plan, and we were to include the community plans at a later date, I believe that the board will do that. I don't think I honestly don't think we have a choice with the electorate. I believe they're going to insist it. But if we get the general plan passed now without them and add them later, I would consider that.
There seems to be some sort of a trend of turnover among various county employees, and I know over the past 5 or 10 years, it seems like a lot of people came and went rather quickly. The team that's in place now, How do you feel about the staffers that the board works with on a daily basis? Do you feel like the county is in a stable position, or do you feel like this trend may continue of the coming and the going revolving door?
I think we're looking pretty stable. I think there is a better feeling of partnership with the staff than maybe there has been. I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing. But I don't sense anything different. The staff seems very approachable. I really feel we have a group of hardworking county employees, and I recognize that. We've already made a couple of high-level staff appointments since I've been sworn in. So, but I believe that they were good ones. I believe they're here to stay, and I think we can work with people that have been put in the positions.
And who were those? I'm the Public Works Director. Is that one?
Well, we put our CAO from an interim to a permanent position. You can hardly ask Shirley a question she doesn't know, and she seems to really be a good part of the team, and I support her. And we just hired a Public Works Director. He's got a lot of experience. I believe he's going to build a good team. I think that the staff that works in the Public Works Department will benefit from having him there. During his tenure, he is a foothill living person. I mean, I'm hopeful that he's going to move to the county and also, but that's his decision. My feeling is he's going to be stable in the position.
And with Shirley Ryan, is the board going to replace her old position, or is that going to be eliminated or unfilled, or what's the plan there?
I don't have an answer for that. Okay. It hasn't been anything that we've discussed or have made any decisions on.
I know that the CAO's office shoulders a lot of work with budget prep, and I know that we're getting into budget season here. Again, you know, you've been here 3 months, you haven't gone through a budget cycle, so no details necessary, but do you have any just basic thoughts as we're gearing up for the budget, and what you're expecting, or whether it's good or bad news?
Well, I'm kind of an eternal optimist, so I like to turn a rock over and find a diamond, you know, and is it going to be good news? I get up in the morning trying to think there's going to be good news, so I guess I'm not going to say there's going to be bad news. Is it going to be challenging? I'll give you that. Obviously, there isn't an endless checkbook in this county. If there was, boy, we could really do some things, but that's not the case, and I don't assume it is. But you have a new board and a fresh board, and sometimes, even in my business career, I found when you're new, even though you may not have the experience in something, you see things differently. It's not that I feel, you know, somebody in the past did a bad job, but you have new eyes on the same subject, and all of a sudden different things pop out. And I think there's a great opportunity for that to happen right now. And with new eyes on the budget, I'm optimistic.
I was speaking with Supervisor Michael Oliveira not too long ago, and he had mentioned that he feels like it's moving in the right direction, and that the deficit that is still there is shrinking and will continue to shrink. And you know, he also mentioned that property taxes could make a huge difference. You know, if those values go up, then that percentage of that the county gets could make a big impact. So I guess just as a county resident, I hope that these values do go up and just give you as a county leader more to work with. And I imagine you are all hoping the same thing.
Well, I know my property tax bill went up. You know, I can laugh about that now. When I opened it, I wasn't particularly laughing, but the reality is, sure, that there's opportunity there if the coffers go up a little bit to not have the deficit that we've been dealing with. when we just did a budget update at mid-year, which I was sitting on the board at that time, the budget from the year before didn't look quite as drastic as it did. The teeter fund looked a little healthier than they projected it to be. The deficit wasn't quite as bad as they thought it was going to be. And so going forward, as I said, we don't have an endless checkbook, but it's not empty either. We just have to use some wisdom. I likened it when I was speaking to somebody a couple days ago. You know, when the family budget gets a little tough, you don't go out and buy a new car. You figure out how to fix the old one. And maybe right now, at least we can fix the old one. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. There is opportunity to do things in the county that have been not taken on, and I'm excited about those things.
Speaking of something you might be excited about, you said there's a program you're working on having to do with foreclosures. Could you give us just a little on that?
Sure. I have read and researched a lot, so I'm almost swimming in it sometimes. But in Rancho Calaveras, there has been a particular challenge dealing with vacant homes and people, for lack of a better term, squatting in them that can cause an unsavory element in the neighborhood. And so I've tried to figure out a way to deal with that doesn't put our law enforcement in jeopardy or our code compliance officers in jeopardy. And I started reading about a foreclosure registry that a lot of counties use and have researched that quite a bit. I've got it with County Council now. I can't tell you exactly how it's going to turn out because obviously, as I have learned, you have to have patience. And after it gets to several departments and everybody gets involved, we'll find out. But in other counties, what happens is a home that goes into foreclosure goes into a registration process with the county and has to do so within 30 days of a foreclosure. And whoever's holding the note or the paper on the foreclosure, it's how I like to refer to it, is responsible to keep the home in order. If they have somebody living in it, they are responsible to make sure they're supposed to be there. And it puts the responsibility back on the mortgage holder, who in many cases has been a bank that has nothing to do with Calaveras County other than holding the paper on the item. And frankly, they don't have the same pride in where we live that we do. So I can't tell you exactly how it's going to turn out, but it's in the works. And that has occupied a good bit of my time and some other things also.
Well, Steve, we're just out of time here, and I know there are lots of other things that we'll go over.
I'm just getting started.
We'll have you back, and thank you for putting the time in to serve the public in the way that you have, and we do wish you all the best in the years to come. So thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining me on this edition of Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger, and I hope you join me next time.